What kind of person calls the cops on you for protecting your own land? That's the question I was grappling with as I stared down Karen. Her voice shrill enough to scare the horses in the barn. My ranch. A sprawling 50 acres of rolling hills and stubborn dreams. Had been my sanctuary for decades. It was where I'd raised my kids, buried my old dog, and poured every ounce of my soul into keeping the land alive. But Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA across the county line, had other plans. She'd stormed onto my property that morning, her SUV parked crookedly on my gravel drive, claiming my fence was an eyesore and violated some obscure regulation she'd dug up. I told her this wasn't HOA land, it was mine. Free and clear. She didn't listen. Instead, she whipped out her phone, dialed 911, and accused me of threatening her. Me, a 60-year-old widower who'd never raised a fist in his life. The audacity of it burned in my chest as I stood there, watching her gesticulate wildly, her voice carrying across the fields like a siren. I'd known Karen for years, though not by choice. She was the kind of neighbor who'd complain about your mailbox being 2 inches too tall or your grass's shade too wild. The HOA she ran with an iron fist didn't technically cover my ranch, but that never stopped her from trying to extend her reign. She'd been after me for months, letters in my mailbox, snide comments at the feed store, even a petition to clean up my property. My ranch wasn't pristine. The barn needed paint, and the fences sagged in places. But it was mine, earned through years of sweat and sacrifice. Karen didn't see that. She saw a threat to her perfect little world of manicured lawns and cookie-cutter houses. That morning, she'd crossed the line literally. She'd marched past my no trespassing sign, clipboard in hand, snapping photos of my fence like she owned the place. When I confronted her, asking her to leave, she screamed that I was harassing her. Then came the call to the police. As I waited for the cops, my blood boiled, but I kept my cool. I'd learned long ago that people like Karen thrive on chaos. I went inside, grabbed my deed from the safe, and pulled out a folder of old photos of me kids playing in the fields, my late wife planting roses by the porch. These weren't just documents. They were proof of a life built here, a legacy Karen couldn't touch. By the time the patrol car rolled up, I was ready. Karen was still ranting, her face red as she waved her phone at the officer, a young guy named Daniels who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She claimed I'd intimidated her, that my fence was a public nuisance, and that I'd refused to comply with HOA rules. I let her talk, her words piling up like kindling. Then I handed Officer Daniels the deed. "This is my land," I said quietly. "She's trespassing." His eyes flicked between us, and I could see him piecing it together. Karen's story was unraveling, but she didn't know it yet. The truth has a way of cutting through noise. Daniels walked the property line with me, his boots crunching on the gravel. I showed him the survey markers, the same ones my father had set decades ago. Karen followed, her voice growing louder with every step. But Daniels wasn't buying it. He asked her for proof of her claims, any document showing the HOA had jurisdiction here. She fumbled, producing nothing but a crumpled pamphlet of rules that didn't apply. I could have gloated, but I didn't. Instead, I told Daniels about the ranch's history, how my family had worked this land for 3 generations, how every splintered fence post held a story. He nodded, his face softening. Karen, sensing the tide turning, doubled down, accusing me of forging the deed. That's when I felt a flicker of doubt, not in myself, but in whether this fight was worth it. What if she kept coming back? What if this was just the beginning? Then came the twist. The kind of moment that makes you question everything. As Daniels examined the markers, my neighbor Tom pulled up in his truck. He'd been quiet for years, keeping to himself, but he'd seen everything from his porch across the road. He stepped out, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "I've got something to say," he said, holding up his phone. He played a video he'd recorded that morning, Karen. Clear as day. Stepping over my "no trespassing" sign, ignoring my requests to leave, and yelling threats about taking this to court. The footage was damning, her own words betraying her. My heart thudded in my chest, not from triumph, but from relief. Someone else had seen the truth. Tom's video wasn't just evidence. It was a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. Karen's face went pale, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. For the first time, she had nothing to say. The confrontation reached its peak as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the ranch in a fiery glow. Officer Daniels turned to Karen, his voice calm but firm. "Ma'am, you're on private property without permission. That's trespassing." Karen sputtered, her hands flailing as she tried to spin a new story. But the video had sealed her fate. Daniels didn't need to hear more. He wrote her a citation, the kind that came with a fine she couldn't talk her way out of. I stood there, watching her clutch the ticket, her eyes blazing with a mix of fury and disbelief. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. Nobody likes being caught in their own trap, but I couldn't muster the sympathy. She'd chosen this fight, not me. As Daniels explained the fine, I noticed Tom standing by his truck, giving me a small nod. It wasn't much, but it felt like a lifeline, a quiet acknowledgement that the truth still mattered. Karen's downfall was swift, but it wasn't just about the fine. Word spread fast in our small town. By the next morning, the feed store was buzzing with the story of HOA Karen getting her comeuppance. People I hadn't spoken to in years stopped by with coffee or a kind word, sharing their own run-ins with her. It turned out she'd been bullying half the county, from demanding neighbors repaint their sheds to threatening lawsuits over unmowed lawns. The citation wasn't just a fine. It was a crack in her armor, a public humiliation she couldn't spin. I heard she tried to rally her HOA board to fight back, but even they were tired of her antics. Her reign, built on intimidation and petty rules, was crumbling. I didn't need to see her face to know she was reeling. Her silence was proof enough. But this wasn't about winning or losing. It was about standing up for what was mine, for the life I'd built on this land. That night, I sat on my porch, the same one where my wife and I used to watch the stars. I thought about how easy it would have been to give in, to let Karen's noise drown me out. But I hadn't. I'd fought, not with fists or shouts, but with the quiet strength of truth. Tom's video, Daniel's fairness, even the old deed in my hand, they were reminders that the world still had good in it, even when it felt like it didn't. I realized something else, too. This land wasn't just mine. It was a promise to my kids, to their kids, to anyone who believed in holding on to what matters. Karen could try to control everything, but she couldn't control that. The next week, I fixed the fence, not because of Karen, but because it felt right. I painted the barn, too, and planted new roses by the porch, the kind my wife would have loved. Neighbors started dropping by more often, not just to gossip about Karen, but to lend a hand or share a story. The ranch felt alive again, like it hadn't in years. I even got a letter from Tom, thanking me for standing up to her. He wrote, "You reminded me what it means to fight for home." I kept that letter on my desk, next to the deed. It wasn't about the fine or the video, or even Karen's defeat. It was about knowing that one person, standing their ground, could make a difference. That's what I'd carry forward, long after the dust settled. In the end, Karen moved away. Not because of the fine, I suspect, but because she couldn't face the town she'd tried to rule. I didn't throw a party or gloat. Instead, I walked my land, feeling the earth under my boots. The same earth my father walked. The same earth my kids would inherit. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And no one, not Karen. Not anyone could take that away. The fight had been ugly, but it taught me something. Home isn't just a place. It's the courage to defend it, the people who stand by you, and the stories you leave behind. I looked out at the horizon, the sky clear and endless, and knew I'd keep fighting for this. Always. End.